Coming up, Dhiren's going to talk about, I guess my intro to him, I think the first time me and him sat down, he said, I don't know exactly what I want to talk about, and I said, well, what are your hobbies? And he said, books, and I go, okay, and then like weeks later he came up with this presentation on mystery, so it went through a lot of twists and turns, but go ahead, Dhiren.
All right, thanks. So hi everyone, in case I haven't met you yet, my name is Dhiren. I'm currently a software engineer here at Cisco. Been here for just over 1 year now. Okay, just to go a little bit more into my background. As a kid, I've always really enjoyed reading, and that included all kinds of genres, from fiction to nonfiction to mysteries especially. And so one of the things that most people would do when they pick up a book is they open that first page and they start from page 1, word 1, and they go from there. For whatever reason, and I still have not figured out where I picked up this habit from, I would always read the last page of the book first. And so normally that's okay, because most of the time the last page of the book is something like they all lived happily ever after, or just sort of a summary of the characters. But one of my favorite authors as a kid was Agatha Christie, and she's a British mystery author. Most of her works are from the earlier mid-1900s. And I picked up her And Then There Were None one day. And so if any of you have ever had a chance to read this book, you will know that on the last page of this book, you find out who the murderer is. And so, of course, I had started from the last page, so when I read that, I figured, oh, there's no point in reading the book now. I know who did it. The whole story is just ruined for me. But I decided to continue with it anyways. And this has become one of my favorite mysteries that I've ever read. And the reason is, even though I thought I knew who had done it, even though I knew the killer's name, while I was reading the book, I could not figure out who the murderer was. And that's because of the way she wrote the story and how amazing she is at writing mysteries. But it brought up this idea to me of questioning everything. I had assumed I had all the answers. I assumed that the facts I had were correct. And because of that, it threw me way off. If I had stopped for a minute and questioned what I thought I knew, then perhaps I would have figured out the mystery beforehand instead of having to go all the way through the book to get to that last page again. So I want to give you another example of an idea where this questioning everything comes into play. This was a puzzle proposed to me, I think, in high school by one of my math teachers. It was after AP testing had been finished, so we were just kind of sitting and messing around. And he gave us this puzzle, and he said, here are 9 dots arranged in a square. What is the fewest number of straight lines that you can use to connect all 9 dots without lifting your pencil? And so, does anybody here have any guesses on what the best answer is? 4. Yes. 5? I heard 5. So he gave us this puzzle, and we got into partners. We went and sat down, started scribbling and coming up with some sketches. And after a little while, we came up with a 4-line solution. There we go. Okay. And so when we had started, our teacher had actually given us a hint saying the best solution is 4 lines. So we kind of had that base to start with. And we were able to come up with this 4-line solution. And so when we did, we were really excited. We'd solved this puzzle, and now we could just kind of sit and relax, goof around for the rest of the class. When we showed him our answer, he just kind of smirked at us for a bit and said, oh, good job. But the best answer is actually 3 lines. And so we were kind of frustrated at him. He likes to joke around with us a lot, but we weren't expecting this. So we sat down again, got our paper out, we drew 9 dots again. And we worked on it for a little while this time. This took a little bit longer, but eventually we did come up with 3-line solution. And so now we've got 3 lines, better than 4 lines. And so again, we got up, showed him our answer. Once again, he kind of smirked at us, clapped a bit, and said, "Ha, good job. But it was actually a 2-line solution." So now we're just kind of enjoying the joke with him, and take out another piece of paper, draw 9 more dots, and we scribble around for a little while. And eventually, we do come up with a 2-line solution. So we've gone from 4 lines to 3 lines. Obviously, you can't do better than 2 lines. We show him this again, and I'm sure you've noticed the pattern with this teacher already. Turns out there's a 1-line solution as well. And so, based on that 2-line solution, some of you may have figured out one of the possible 1-line solutions. There's a second one that takes a little bit more creativity. You can draw it with a single regular pencil instead of the massive one that you need for that previous slide. But there is a 1-line solution that exists. So we came up with it. We show him our answer. 1 line, we can't do better than that. So now we're really excited. There's a 0-line solution as well. So once we showed him our 1 line, he said, "Good job, but do it in 0." And so this took us a while to come up with. But there is a 0-line solution that exists to this problem. It is possible to connect all 9 dots with 0 lines. And when I was putting this presentation together, I did a quick search online, and I couldn't find any references to this 0-line solution. So I would recommend trying to solve that one. I won't give the answer here, but even though we had come up with it, the teacher pointed out, when I told you it was 4 lines, you gave me a 4-line solution. When I said it was 3, you gave me 3. Would you have ever thought to try to come up with a 0-line solution if I hadn't told you it existed? And the answer there was no. Because again, when he told us what we believed was the optimal solution, we didn't question it. We assumed that was correct, and we went from there. We didn't try to come up with anything better. We didn't try to reimagine the problem or go even better. We just took what he gave us at face value and came up with a 4-line solution, which was much worse than our eventual 0-line. So if we had stopped for a minute and questioned everything, we could have come up with that 0-line solution on our own. I want to give one more example on this idea of questioning everything. This is supposed to be a door to a classroom at my high school. It's not actually, I just found a generic door on Google. But our door was slightly different in that it was painted solid green, and there was no window on the door. So you would not be able to see inside to see if anyone's inside the classroom, and then vice versa. If you're inside, you can't tell if anyone is outside. And so at my high school, most importantly, the rooms are locked during breaks, so lunches, recess, etc. Usually what happens is when the bell goes off, all the students come back from lunch, they wait outside the classroom for the teacher to show up, then you go in and class begins. And I never figured out if this rule was true or not, but at least at my high school, students said that if a teacher didn't show up within 15 minutes of class starting, everyone was allowed to go home. So on this day, we had all one by one started getting to the classroom. I got there and there's some of my friends standing outside. So I just stood with them talking and waiting for the teacher to show up. Bell goes off, teacher's still not there, minutes are going by, we're getting close to that 15-minute mark, and he's still not there, so we're getting pretty excited that the day's over. Eventually, of course, he does show up. But he comes over to us from inside the classroom. And it turns out the door wasn't locked the whole time. We had assumed that someone else had checked the door to see if it was unlocked and if the teacher was in there. As one person came up each time, they just joined our little group and started talking. No one went to check the door. So again, no one questioned anything in this case. We all just kind of stood around like little lemmings following each other. And We ended up wasting 15 minutes, and the teacher, of course, held after 15 minutes for that. So if we had even questioned something as simple as, can I get into this classroom or not, we would have saved ourselves a lot of time there. But instead, we just kind of stood around, and that was fun. But okay, so I want to go back to mystery genre for a second. On your left here is Agatha Christie, and on your right is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Agatha Christie is most famous for Hercule Poirot, her character, and then Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes. And so, as I'm sure you can guess from the black and white photos, these are fairly older authors, both from the early to mid-1900s. But they're two of my favorite mystery authors. And the reason is because, to me, they're the epitome of questioning everything. They didn't assume anything on how mysteries could happen, how the genre had worked previously. They came up with extremely creative plot lines that involved, at that time it may have been very innovative solutions, but today they're very realistic. And anyone who's reading it can go through and believe what's going on and solve the puzzle themselves. There's a lot of modern authors that I do enjoy as well, but I see a lot of people whose stories kind of copycat theirs. They're not as innovative, they just kind of add a new character, throw a little twist here or there, but at the end of the day, it's still very similar to one of their stories. And so that's why, to me, they're, the sort of core of questioning everything. And so what? Why have you sat there listening to me give you puzzles for the last 10 minutes? This has applications outside of those few examples I showed you, especially in real life, thankfully. For learning, when you question things, it gives you the ability to apply what you've learned more in depth instead of just on the surface solving homework problems. You get to see how all of the different disciplines tie into each other, especially within engineering as well. If you don't question something, technology is changing so quickly, so a solution that you have that's optimal today might be completely obsolete tomorrow. So if you're not questioning why you're doing something the way you are now and where the field is going, then you could always be behind and you just be playing catch up. In my personal life as well, I try to cook, emphasis on try. And so because I don't really know what I'm doing, I have to ask a lot of questions. What ingredients go well together? More often, what don't go well together? And so I learn by asking questions that way. Even with sports, the questions you ask there are not just, did I win, did I lose? But it's more, why did I win, why did I lose? Because if you don't ask that question, then you'll never be able to improve, and you'll never be able to change the outcome the next time you try to compete at that same sport. And so I think the best way to end a session that has been about questions is to say, thank you for listening, and do you have any questions for me?
Any questions?
Tell us some of the questions that came to your mind after recently about, other than cooking, about life in general. Not career, not books, in life in general. What's the life questions that came up
Sure.
in you?
Let's see. So I'm fairly young. I've just graduated college. And so one of the questions I've asked now is, my social circle has completely changed. Most of my friends are now spread out. College friends are also gone. High school friends have moved out. And so now it's kind of starting over for me. So it's kind of saying, what was the person I was before, and where would I like to go? What values have I learned throughout being in school, playing sports, etc.? How can I apply that to who I want to be in the future, and how can I get there?
What was the toughest question you ever answered?
Can I say that one? It's a hard one. There's been been a lot of questions that I've struggled with. In terms of, so I think the first one that comes to mind is when I was trying to decide where to do my undergraduate. That's a pretty big decision, at least for me, because I wasn't entirely sure what field I wanted to go in, what career path I wanted to follow. And so picking a school is the very beginning of that, and you're relatively young when you have to make that decision. So that was definitely a pretty hard decision for me, and one that I spent a lot of time on. Yes?
Do you also question everything at work, and what is the response you get?
Yes, I do. So that's a really good thing about Cisco. I've only been here for about over a year, but at least with the team that I'm working on now, they respond really well to the questions I ask. I'm sure I've been annoying at times with the number of questions, but everyone's very helpful. They're always very kind and considerate. They're willing to explain anything. And if you question why something is being done, is it the best way, then they're always willing to take a look at it and see if there's a better way to do it.
What's your favorite question for a question, which is an answer?
My favorite question for a question. Why? That's
Which is an answer.
I think so. I would say why is my favorite question. That is also an answer because a lot of little kids ask that. I have a lot of younger cousins, and so if I say, the sky is blue, why? The grass is green, why? You can't watch TV anymore, why? It keeps going like that. It's always another question and another answer that has to come for them.
What question did your teacher ask you when he found out you all were standing outside?
He was very disappointed. That was supposed to be, that math class was supposed to be a college level course, so for us to fail even getting into the room, that was pretty bad. Yes.
So you mentioned you have been here less than 1 year?
Just over 1 year now.
So how do you like Cisco?
I enjoy being here. The work is really good, the people are really great. Cisco is involved in a lot of different areas as well, so I get to, even if I'm not directly working on it, I get to explore those opportunities from talks like this or other meetings. I've enjoyed the time here.
So whenever you found any bugs for us, and I just feeling like you kind of be happy of solving those mysteries.
Yes. Filing, that's one of the interesting parts about being on the test team. Your goal is to break everything. And so when you actually do that, it's kind of this mixed feeling because you found an issue that's an issue, but you've done your job, so it's fun.
Are you generally a mystery reader? Mostly a mystery reader?
Recently, it's been a little bit more science fiction, just because I have a couple of friends who have recommended a few books to me that I'm reading. But yeah, mysteries is definitely one of my go-to genres if I'm looking for something.
Who are some of the current writers you follow?
Current writers? Let's see. I haven't had a chance to read anything recently.
Well, how many people here have read Agatha Christie? Oh, quite a few. When I first met Dhiren and he mentioned that, I kind of like my jaw dropped because I read Agatha Christie when I was in junior high as well.
So Orson Scott Card, he's a science fiction writer. He wrote Ender's Game and that series. I'm also reading, one of the ones that's been recommended to me is the Lord of the Rings series. I've seen the movies, but I've never read the books, so I would definitely recommend those after starting it. What else have I looked at recently? There's also a lot of, so going back to these older, more classic tales, there's a lot of them that I haven't read before that couldn't be covered in school, so I'm going back to those right now as well.
I know a lot of people, after watching a movie, they want to read the book, compare.
Yes.
Is this your habit?
I usually do it the other way around. Because I've liked reading so much, I usually go for the book and then compare it to the movie. But yeah, that's definitely something I do.